Delighted to welcome Joy Loverde back. She's the author of Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? And one of the reasons that we've got this discussion scheduled at the time of year that we do is because Joy's other book, The Complete Elder Care Planner, is in its fifth printing and
Fourth,
fourth
just came
printing.
out, right?
It's a brand new revised version, and we're going to walk through that, folks, so you can get a glimpse at what's in there during our discussion. But Joy, I am delighted to have you back. I am excited to have such a large audience for what I know will be a real thought-provoking discussion. And but before we dive into talking about caregiving and solo agers and taking a peek at your book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, for over 35 years, this has been a topic of mine, caregiving, of course. And then about 10 years ago, when I was speaking to rooms full of caregivers, they would come up to me after almost every talk and say, well, I'm doing this for people in my family, but who's going to take care of me when I'm old? And that became the second book. So I have been talking to family members, solo agers, caregivers, professionals for over 35 years, and I eat, sleep, and drink caregiving.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's dive in. You gave me a slide deck here to keep us on track. But and folks, especially those that maybe have attended our discussions in the past, I encourage everybody to type in your questions and comments and throughout the discussion. But Joy and I chatted about it, and to kind of stay on topic, we're going to run through her slide deck, and then we're going to have an open discussion with everybody. So, but that doesn't mean you can't ask a question at any point during the discussion. Just use chat or Q&A, and then at the end you could raise your hand if you prefer to ask a question verbally. But so Joy, you take it away. You just tell me when you want me to advance your slide.
How about right now?
Okay.
Okay. The reason we came up with this topic was because I am a member of several solo ager groups. And being embedded in the caregiving conversation, I wondered how many solo agers were thinking about caregiving. I knew for a fact, Steve, that they were thinking all the time about the question, who's going to take care of me? But when I would bring up in the groups, have you thought about someone needing your attention and care? They gave me this deer in the headlight look, like, no, I don't really think about it. And I knew that this would be an important topic for solo agers specifically because caregiving is different for solo agers.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah. So if you kind of go to the next slide, I'll kind of dive into some of the reasons why this is true. First of all, if you are a solo ager, and even if you're not, you need to ask yourself who might unexpectedly land on my doorstep. Now, we know the traditional people, maybe they're family members, but there will be others. And how prepared will we be for that? There are very specific financial and legal considerations for solo agers if they're going to get involved in the life of someone else, and especially if they are not related to them. So this is why I spend a lot of focus on legal and financial considerations. I can tell you the story of a friend of mine who took a friend to a nursing home because she needed that level of care. And without thinking, she signed all the papers to help her friend get admitted into the nursing home. And little did she know she was signing an agreement to pay for the care if her friend could not do it. She was left with a $150,000 nursing home bill. Had no idea that she was doing this. So,
Mm.
solo agers, we're going to be always there for our friends if we have that kind of agreement, but we can only take it so far, or we have to know what we're getting into. Solo agers have to think about what's their backup plan if they're not available. If they become committed to a caregiving situation and they're not available, who's behind them? Mostly no one. So there are ways that we have to protect ourselves and figure out how to make a team in this regard. Now, this last one, have I talked about caregiving with my friends? Even if you plan to say no to your friends, no, I cannot do this. It requires a conversation so that no one is taken by surprise. It's okay to say no to caregiving if you're a solo ager, because the responsibilities are wide and vast. So think about that. So if you're going to talk to your friends now about going forward on needing care both ways, everybody has the right to say no, and it's a good idea to know now.
So I'm going to kind of jump in here because I just want to restate what I'm hearing, which I think is brilliant, Joy, is that we've got folks that are out there that identify as solo agers, or they're thinking about what happens if I outlive my partner and who's going to take care of me. But the question that you're posing is, instead of who's going to take care of you, think about if somebody needed your assistance, how would you help them? I heard
That's
that
right.
correctly, right?
You absolutely did. And in fact, like I mentioned, when I'm in these groups and I bring up caregiving, that's not the first thing they think of. And I ask many times, have you even planned for it? And they say, no, I haven't. And that's why we're having this conversation today, because it's so critical. We live in a caregiving world. There's a caregiving shortage. We're all going to depend on each other for caregiving. We all, in every circumstance, need to figure out how to say no, how to say yes, and go from there.
And okay. And I know Beverly's like, I hope you're going to discuss who's going to take care of the solo agers. And Beverly, I know we're going to discuss that. But what I like is how Joy is approaching this. Is that because once you sort of, if you can think about how, if a solo ager came on your doorstep and you took care of them, or how you would do that, it's going to really, I think, change the way that you are thinking about your own situation in the future, I believe. Now, the one of the questions that you also brought up, if I'm a caregiver and I become unavailable, what's the backup plan? One area that I've seen in solo agers is being that backup plan and being the caregiving quarterback is the profession of aging life care managers.
That's right. And don't forget independent patient advocates.
Oh,
They are
well,
so important, and you'll learn a lot about who those professionals are. There's other professionals. I mean, we definitely have many people we have to put in our backyard. So if
okay.
you want to advance
Yep,
to the
I'm
next
going
slide, that'd be
back
great.
there. I was just taking a quick.
Okay.
Okay, let's get back on track. Okay.
No, we're on track. So longevity means that we're all living longer. So we're all aging together. So this means that the caregiving is really never going to end unless we say no, or unless we're incapable of doing it. So take a look at this super long list of people that you may already have been a caregiver for in your present situation or in the past. But I have to tell you that I'm going to give you an example of how it never ends. So I did all the traditional, I did the parent thing, the grandparent thing, aunts and uncles, and so on. But here is who I am in the caregiving space with right now. I have two sister-in-laws. One has dementia, one lives long distance. They're in their late 80s and 90s. They're on my plate. My older brother in his later 70s, he has Asperger's. I have a newly widowed sister. She's a mess. I'm on her watch too, or she's on mine. Now, here is the biggest surprise of all. When I was working at an ad agency in the 1970s, I became very close with three people. We've all aged together. Those three people right now are in their 80s and 90s. One is dementia, one is a caregiver for his wife, and the other is estranged from her entire family. And every single day I'm on the phone with them or their family, helping everyone manage their care or manage the care of another. And I have another friend who is not doing well. Look at how the caregiving never ends. This is what longevity is bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm. And you know, as you described those roles, they are well, actually, here's your one, not one size fits all. It's just like some of those roles, I imagine it's emotional support, whereas others, it might be more of a hands-on, I'm giving somebody a ride to an appointment or someplace.
Right, right. One of the biggest reasons why I rewrote the last edition of the book, which was in 2009, by the way. It was like another world, 2009 in caregiving. But one of the greatest reasons why I rewrote the book was because other resources do not tend to take the caregivers separately. They lock them all together and they say, okay, all caregivers can do this, that, and the other thing. And nothing could be further from the truth. So we have caregivers now who are very young. They're in the high school and college. We have caregivers who are very old. They could be in their 60s and their 70s. I don't mean old and age-wise, but older because they are caring for people who are very old. We have people who are wealthy, people who are not wealthy as caregivers. We have the solo ager, which is why we're talking to this wonderful group today. Different ballgame for solo agers. We have the LGBTQ plus community, who all kinds of solo agers in that market. And then we have the spouse caregiver, the sibling caregiver, like me, friends, and then also dealing with dementia. Caregivers have to be dealt with separately and they need customized plans. And I made darn sure that I approached this book from everybody's perspective. There were no assumptions. And that's why I felt so compelled to rewrite this book.
Okay. And no, this is great. And I think what I love doing with authors is going through their books chapter by chapter, because it sort of helps us have a dialogue and a discussion. And here's where I think some of the tips and ideas in terms of solo aging will start to materialize for our discussion here. So you've got chapter 1, effective planning.
Right. So here we have a place to start. And the question for us all, whether we're aging solo or not, is when does caregiving really begin? Now, in a lot of times, unfortunately, people begin as though it's a medical model, but that's not my approach. Mine is a proactive, more social model where if I even think of someone who's in my family or in my circle, and I say, I wonder how they're doing. I noticed the last time I was with them, things didn't seem so right. And I would approach them proactively before anything would happen. So the question we all have to ask ourselves as caregivers is, when do I think caregiving begins? And it is my hope that you say, it's now. It's now, before a medical model even has to come into play. Now, we're all going to get caught off guard, and that's why I wrote the chapter, when you get caught off guard, there is a way to manage it without having it be chaotic for you. And so that is why I wrote the chapter, take a look at getting caught off guard, and it takes you through a process so it is manageable.
One of the things that I'm glad you brought this up, Joy, in terms of making the plan. The thing that I've found is that people who identify or think that they're going to be a solo ager are, and the folks that are in the audience right now are open to making a plan. That's why you're here, to learn and to think differently. But I like the social model. That when I'm talking about planning, a lot of times what I talk about is, who can change the light bulb in the middle of your ceiling? Like, is it you? But are you doing that with some trepidation? But that's something that oftentimes gets people thinking that, oh yeah, this is before grab bars and home care. And it's key to do it before, because you and I both know when a lot of people start planning is when they're in the hospital thinking about who's going to give them a ride home.
Oh, I know. So if you care about people in your life, you'll start talking to them about anything that you may see, or you could talk about yourself and say, is there some kind of arrangement we can make, even if it's small, and just like you said, people helping people. For me, that's when caregiving really begins.
Yep. All right. So now I think this is related to the question that I saw there earlier today. Chapter 2, creating your care team.
Yeah. So this, as far as solo agers are concerned, they are the most vulnerable if they do not create a team around them as they perform caregiving tasks, because this is their plan B. And so in the process of trying to figure out all of your resources, it's really important to take a look at all the resources. And like I said, I wrote this book so that there are low-cost, free resources in every chapter. And I would like everyone to know that you don't have to spend a lot of money, and you definitely don't need to spend your own money in order to provide care. So this is for solo agers. It's so critical to make sure you have a team that works with you. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It really doesn't. When help is available, and sharing the care also includes looking at the people. Like, let's say we're caregivers to friends who are in a couple situation, and one of them is not doing so well. We also have to keep our eye on the well spouse, and then the newly widowed person. Even though they may need no care whatsoever, to be newly widowed is a force to reckon with for these people who are, I'm going through it right now with my sister. So the newly widowed is another group. It causes so many physical and emotional problems. And like I said, if you're in the social model of proactive caregiving, this will be on your plate.
Great. Okay. All right. So now you've got a group of chapters that you're calling quality of life chapters. be kind to yourself, safe and secure, transportation and mobility, managing medical care, and quality of life. Talk a
So
little bit about thoughts there.
Sure. Chapter 3 is going to be dealing, well, it deals with a lot of how we can be good to ourselves, but the most important chapter in that one is the one about managing guilt, because there's so much guilt. Guilt is a constant companion when we're caregivers. And so managing guilt, how do we do this? What if something happens to the person we're caring for and it's on our watch? I mean, guilt just doesn't seem to end. So that's what chapter 3 will bring to the table. Safe and secure is in chapter 10. The check-in systems have totally evolved. There's a lot of technology involved there, so check that out. Mobility. I had so much fun writing this chapter because I learned so much about chronic conditions and being in wheelchairs and needing scooters and the ability to have a quality of life and travel and do all kinds of things. So that's what this is just a very positive chapter on mobility. Managing medical care in this day and age, it just runs the gamut. I learned a lot about holistic care. Definitely, you have a program coming up about cannabis. Well, that's a real thing, and it's very popular. I learned a lot about dental care and older adults, and there again are many low cost and free resources for all of these. And perhaps my most favorite chapter is the quality of life. You know, keep in mind as caregivers, we are creating incredible memories for ourselves. And there are so many ideas on how to live in the moment with your elder or the person you're caring for, and savoring these moments and having a good time at caregiving. You know, there are a lot of rewards.
I love it. Okay. And then you know, and folks, what we're doing is we're throwing out a bunch of ideas right now that you know, we're gonna, when we wrap up with the slide deck, then we're gonna have an open discussion, and that's where we can do some really great brainstorming on solutions for solo agers and your personal situations. You know, we can jump into that, but let's keep on going here, because I love this term that you've coined, communicating.
Yeah. I have to tell you something funny about that. And first of all, the first 3 editions of this book, I self-published, and I realized that I needed a publisher because I couldn't keep up. I started out with employee benefits. The human resources directors love this book, and so I started going on the road a long time talking to employee benefits people and also the employees. So the first 3 editions were mine, and the word communicating was a typo, and I kept it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, you know, good things happen. We talked about communicating with friends, but how do you open up the dialogue, especially as a solo ager? So there will be many tips in here, and you could be sure that if we have younger caregivers on this call, you could be sure that if they're dealing with boomer elders, they're going to be in for a real crazy ride, because, you know, boomers think they know everything and they don't want to change their ways, and they're going to do it their way, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of tips for people who are dealing with boomer elders and how to turn those conflicts into cooperation.
Great. And then emergency preparedness. This is really key, and I think this is where many of us, you know, say I'm not ready yet and don't necessarily plan ahead, and then we're in an emergency or a crisis situation.
Right. This is one of my favorite ways to open up a dialogue with somebody who says, "What, you know, I'm not sick. Are you trying to bury me?" You know, we've heard all those things, right? So quick and easy access is something we can do to soften the road as we want to talk about caregiving. So let me give you an example. When I was looking at my mom and seeing, this is inevitable, this is coming down very soon. And what I did is I went to her and I had created a list of emergency contacts. And I sat down with her one day and I said, Mom, just in case something happens to me, I want you to see who all my emergency contacts are. And so you don't have to worry. Here's my friends, my neighbors, my doctors. So here you go. Here's a list for you. And I hope that brings you some peace of mind. And she just thought that was the greatest thing. And then I said to her, would you be so kind as to do it for me so I can have peace of mind too? She said, absolutely. And so she did. And that just began to open the door. Not only that, but it gave me, as the chapter says, access to her inner circle. That was really important. I mean, I couldn't have done it otherwise. There are two really neat things that I learned in the process of writing this chapter for the section that's called If Your Elder is Hospitalized. As I mentioned earlier, independent patient advocates are the new kid on the block, and they are an incredible resource for all of us to know and learn about, and perhaps get to know them and what their services are far before a medical need ever comes into play. And another thing that I learned, and this is they've updated the way we do this, but if somebody is hospitalized and we think they are being discharged too soon, this book, there's a section in here that walks you through the process of stopping the discharge so that you can collect your thoughts and your resources. And if you sincerely believe that someone is being discharged too soon, then I walk you through the steps. I can't tell you how many times people say, my mom isn't ready. She has no one there at home to take care of her. This can't be happening. So this will calm the waters for you. Emergency preparedness is pretty important.
Great. And then we got money matters, legal matters, and insurance.
Sure. These are the nuts and bolts of whoops.
Yeah, there we go.
No, yeah, there you go. These are the nuts and bolts of any conversation about caregiving. I've updated it as best I can. I think the insurance section was really interesting. I learned about new ways to pay for long-term care. Long-term care insurance is also offering hybrid policies. For younger caregivers, they can look into scholarships if they're going to school. There's so much new resources, and again, it's all laid out there for you. The legal matters, I can't stress enough. Solo agers must be prepared to protect themselves financially, and that means getting your legal paperwork in order.
Excellent. Okay, and then what do we have next here? Yeah, this is one that we talk an awful lot about, and it's housing, to move or to stay put. And this is a lot of times of particular interest to solo agers.
Absolutely, and they may even find a situation or find themselves in a situation where they move in together, and then they become the caregiver for their housemate. So it's not unusual, but I have to tell you, and everybody I think on this call knows this, the statistic is maybe 98% of people say they want to live in their own homes for as long as possible, right? We hear it all day long. I don't want to move. I love my house. That's that. But nobody knows how. And so I have a how to age in place questionnaire that will actually help you be successful at this. And as we age in place, and if we're not aging in place alone now, and we plan to stay home alone, then we have to change our gear into how we stay successfully aging in place alone. I spell that all out in the book. It's so important. If you love the idea about staying home, then do yourself a favor and ask yourself the hard questions right now.
Yep.
There's one other thing that's important about housing, and we have to take a look at the weather. So if we are caregiving for someone and we don't live with them, and it's, whether you're a solo ager caregiver or not, the weather is wreaking havoc on the housing situation for us caregivers. This happened to me when my mom lived in Florida, and she was a victim of Hurricane Charlie. So we got hurricanes and floods and fires and you name it. There are plans in the book and new resources for you, because weather causes homelessness and it also causes temporary displacement. And we have to be prepared for that.
Well, I didn't know where you were going with that. I totally agree, but I was sort of thinking on the lines of you're in Chicago, where it's harder to get outside when if you live in a climate where wintertime, where there's snow and cold temps, you may not be able to get out and be as active as you normally like. But
what you're defining is isolation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 14 and 15, death and dying and access now.
Again, saying goodbye and creating memories is what it's all about at this time, and not to be afraid of it. And then access now, it's a master guide for all paperwork and getting organized. And it also helps you ask the question, did I forget anything?
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, and so man, what a robust.
We have some more.
What's that?
So we've got a couple more of the coming years that are coming up the pike. If you'll advance the slide.
Oh,
is this the slide, the last one? Okay, so let me just tell you about 2 years that are coming up that we all need to know. The first one is 2026. And the significance of knowing about these 2 years is you're going to meet up with people who say, I've got time to plan. I don't want to talk about this. Let's just do something fun. So here are 2 years for you to keep in mind when someone says, I don't want to do this right now. 2026 begins the flooding of the long-term care zone for aging boomers. So we got 77 million people starting to need care, and it's going to start to show up in 2026. Let me give you an example of that one. So I called my local hospital where I get all my medical care, and I said, I would like to make an appointment to get my hearing checked. And I'm thinking, okay, in a couple weeks. They couldn't see me for 5 months. Now, that's an indication of what's going to start to happen. So procrastination will get you. The other year is 2030. By 2030, all baby boomers are going to be 65 years of age and over. Now, we in the industry don't call we don't just say it's 2030. It's already been dubbed the 2030 problem. The care worker crisis will be, or the shortage of it, will be at an all-time high. And if we haven't made plans for care, it'll be just terrible. Many of the senior living communities will be full. And in some cases, the higher levels of care will have a waiting list. Some already have the waiting list right now.
Got it.
So 2 years, keep on your radar. 2026.
and yeah,
2030.
and I think that's the point. I'm glad that you reminded us of this, uh the demographic shifts, because it's just reiterates how we need to plan it, because the other thing that we know when supply and demand is at its peak is that prices go up, as if a lot of options are not expensive already. And but this was great. This was a great overview, and I think it plants the seeds for a lot of talking points, and we've got a lot of questions that have come in. So Joy, if you're cool with this, let's dive in and tackle some of these.
I would, if I can, I will.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. Okay. So let's see. Someone asks, how do you respond when when loved ones expect you to step in and be a caregiver because you are solo? Yeah, I've received a lot of phone calls like that, because it's like, oh, I'm taking care of my kids and I got all this stuff. You're on your own. Can you help me out? It's sort of a reverse challenge there.
Right.
Have,
Yeah.
have you seen that, Joy?
Oh my gosh, for the past 35 years, I mean, we didn't even know solo aging existed back then, but we knew that people were defining that issue within a family. So absolutely. Well, it's all about creating boundaries. You can say, look, I can't do this, but I can do that. Just once you have the big idea, which we just went through all the things we have to think about as caregivers, if you can say just one thing you can do and then say no to the thing you can't do, that helps alleviate. But we have to be very certain and create boundaries within relationships.
But you know what I also like about that request, and to the person who asked the question, I understand the challenge. It's also a great opportunity to have a dialogue with somebody, and I may have some time to do this, okay, but I'd like to sit down with you. And when you sit down, say, how you're asking me to do these things to help in caregiving. One of my concerns is that there's not going to be somebody there to take care of me. So can we have a dialogue in terms of, if I needed help, like you're asking me to chip in,
Well, I have to tell you, Steve, sometimes the elder doesn't care about your busy, solo life. That's the problem, is they don't respect that. It's like, well, you're the daughter, you're the solo ager, you do it. And I mean, it's almost like it's not even a question, it's a command. Well, we're adults now and we have to manage that.
Okay. I dropped this into chat so everybody can read it. It says, I'm in my mid-50s. I'm in a solo aging discussion group. Oh, awesome. Okay. We're listening to presentations from caregiving, businesses, trust companies, fiduciaries, and besides great expense. I'm also concerned that many of these businesses are not going to be around when I need them in my 70s or older. They also don't seem to have much succession planning of who will take over their clients who have needs 20 years into the future. Any suggestions?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I hear this all the time. And so we current caregivers are going to be carving new paths for the professionals. It's up to us to say to them, if I go with you now, let's say you're talking to a lawyer. Okay, so you're talking to a law firm and you say, look, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't know how long you're going to be in business. I don't even know if you're going to be alive. So you tell me how we're going to work this out. You put the onus on the professional, and it is up to them to figure out how their business model works for you. This hasn't been done before. Nobody ever talks to their advisors for their business succession plan. Well, that starts now. We have to make that happen. And if they don't have like a firm behind them, if they don't have a plan behind them, go to someone else who does, because plenty of them do have succession plans. And that's what you have to look for in an advisor.
Okay, great. Okay, let me make sure that I address this, and let's have some discussion around how solo agers can plan for their own care. That's the topic of the webinar, and I want to make sure that I know we've been talking about it, but for Deborah, I want to make sure that we address this.
Every single thing that we talked about in the caregiving book is the same in the Who Will Take Care of Me book, but the tables are turned. You will have to deal with every single issue from a different perspective. And so all of the resources, the questions are different. The succession plan for our well-being is different. How we approach people in our lives to care for us, knowing we need people that we don't even know, the revolving door of the relationship. All of every single thing we talked about today is the reverse.
Yeah.
And that's why I had to write 2 books, because caring for someone else means we're going to care for somebody, but we have to take care of our stability and financially and otherwise. Looking for care means we have to come up with a lot of money besides other things, and making sure being responsible for how we manage all these new people that are going to be in our life. So same issues, different side of the coin.
Yeah. Now, and Deborah, I've moderated so many of these discussions. I want to share a few thoughts that gleaning things that because Joy has given us a great outline on all of the different considerations. But what I found with the solo aging group and the solo agers right now, okay, how do I make a plan? Well, the first thing is you've got to document who is in your network at this point in time. Okay. Now, that could be that you can be a solo ager with family. Okay. But maybe not. But so it could be friends, it could be neighbors, and you might not know your neighbors right now. But what I found in some of this brainstorming with solo agers is that it's sort of like, okay, now I've got incentive to get to know my neighbors a little bit better, because if something was going to happen to me, that is a very convenient person that I could call to say I need help, or or what have you. And so I call it building our personal village. It's really taking an inventory of all these people in our lives. As Joy had talked about, it might be coworkers from 20 years ago, and and that's, I think, the first step.
Can I tell Deb something, Steve?
Yeah.
Just that money is number 1, okay? You got to figure out the finances. But number 2 is going to really be important for anyone who's asking the question, who's going to take care of me? Housing is everything, because that's where we create a system of support, where we might have neighbors, or we might choose to move to a life plan community. But the housing is really where it's at, because we can't think about where we live without thinking about who's going to take care of me while I live there. And you know what? It's not about technology. It's not about these apps and not about all this. It is about people connecting with people where we live. Steve, you and I were going to do a talk about urban living and moving to a what we call a NORC, and it's a naturally occurring retirement community. This might be something that anyone who's living in a single family home might want to consider. So I live in a NORC, and what that means is I live in a building. I live in Chicago downtown. There's 40 floors. We have young people in the building, but we have people that I have known for over 40 years, and we are all aging together. And guess what? We're all taking care of each other and doing things. I am personally taking care of a 95-year-old neighbor. So where you live is, that's where I would go if I were you, Deb, and anyone else, is figure out the money, but then go right to the housing. And that'll bring you so much peace of mind.
Yeah, this is great. Okay, let's get through these here. The person that asked the question and said that they were part of a solo aging support group. Lots of people are curious about how you found your support group, or did you create it on your own? If you can drop that into chat, that would be great. Carmen asks, how can you help when they do not want to be helped or accept any help, especially when it's somebody who's not in the same country? Any thoughts on how to encourage somebody that needs assistance that is refusing it?
Well, I heard, especially if they don't live in the country, there's no getting around this. If this is the situation and you're trying to manage it over the phone, it won't work. It just doesn't. At least an initial conversation has to be in person. The reason people do not want help is they don't trust us. End of story. And we have to start there. Forget all the problems that they may have. We have to reestablish the relationship that we have with people that, I mean, even though we may be related to them, we do not know each other anymore. They don't know who we are. We don't know who they are. So start there. Get that relationship back on track.
Okay, great. And let's see here. Okay. Okay. How do you take care of yourself when you're busy taking care of other people? Carmen had that question.
Well, I'm so in charge of my time. That's it. I create boundaries. Sometimes well, I take naps. I just take a nap when things are crazy. I mean, I haven't slept through the night since my first caregiving experience, which was over 30 years ago. So I've learned to take a nap and shut it off and say, I need this. And even if it's for 15 minutes, I wake up and I say, okay, now I'm not as angry as when I went to bed.
Mindy would like us to elaborate a little bit more on the chapter on money because it's so crucial, and she says tips are welcome.
I don't even know where to start, Mindy. It is so expensive. So here's what I would do. What I learned in writing this edition of the book is I learned about a whole bunch of new resources, advisor resources that didn't cost a lot of money or they were free. I also learned about many ways to get things for free. And so if you just if you want to take a look at the book, fine. If you don't, get an advisor. We cannot do caregiving on our own. We can't figure this out. There's too much going on. I would never do caregiving without a team. And they include all different kinds of people, not necessarily professionals. I always talk to other caregivers and say, how are you affording your mom's care? And they tell me the most creative things. Like, let me give you an example. I have a family that I know, there's 5 kids in the family. They decided one sibling would be the caregiver for a year and the other ones would pay all their expenses, and they rotate. Amazing. I mean, there's so many options.
Okay, let's see. Somebody said, did any of the participants in the Solo Agers group have plans and ideas on how they will be cared for? And Michelle comments here, and I'll drop this into chat. One option may be to put an elder law attorney and or private patient advocate on retainer to age with you, someone you're established with that can be a resource as your age. And Michelle, this suggestion is what I'm seeing more and more folks that are identifying themselves as solo agers doing. seeking a professional that they can have a long-term relationship with and check in on an annual basis.
Yeah, but keep in mind that they have to ask that person, what do they do if they're not going to be around?
But who's
Just, I
their
don't care
backup?
who's right. You have got to ask that question every single time. And then you have to meet that person if they have one available. That's why I just can't stress it enough.
Okay, back to money matters. Someone asked, do you need a CPA if you already have a tax preparer who is a CPA? Yeah,
That's, I mean, if people have to find out when they meet with a professional. One of the first things I do in order to answer this question is I would ask someone that's a professional advisor. I'd say, what should I be asking you that I don't know?
yeah, and when we talk
Yeah.
about money, everybody's financial situation is different. Whereas
Yeah.
some individuals do have more complex taxes that might require more detail. But this is where you're going to dive in, and that's, I think, the most important thing on Money Matters is to really dive in and figure out how much you've got and where your income sources are. This is a good question. What's the liability risk of caregivers? Like if you're just volunteering to help your best buddy, you know, have you?
It's big. There are liabilities. Talk to a lawyer, find out. I mean, there are definite liabilities. What if you're driving them to the doctor's appointment and you get in a car accident? I mean, there's so much that can happen. And these are the little things that we need to know, especially as a solo ager, because we are really putting a lot of our stability at risk, and we can't do that. We have to know what we're getting into.
Yep. And then Carmen, these are great questions, folks, and I'm dropping some of them into chat because I'm hoping with all the people in the audience today that folks feel free to give your advice as well.
Yeah.
But it's Carmen says we're caregiving for our parents who live in a country where there's no sense of community, and the seniors community don't exist at all. All of the children have moved away. You know, there's some Asian countries where they are penalizing children financially for not being around to take care of their children, because now the older adults become more of a burden on the societal infrastructure.
I'll tell you something crazy. In Japan, many of the elders are breaking the law so they can go to jail and be cared for there.
Oh no. Oh, that's horrible. Okay. I'm doing my best to get through these. I'm reminding people, because we got a couple of minutes to the top of the hour, that this is recorded, and so this will be on proaging.com along with the chat transcript, and I'll have Joy's PowerPoint and everything. Let's see. So that's there. Okay. Lots of Joy fans that are in the audience. And
Thank you.
okay, everyone should plan for care, get long-term care insurance, but especially solo agers.
You know what's cool about long-term care insurance? I learned this in the process, this new research, is that it used to be you couldn't do it if you had a health event, but now the real good agents know how to do hybrid policies. So don't take it off your list just because you might have been, or someone might have been diagnosed with something. Look into different policies. I just learned about one where it's a membership, it's a cash membership where you could buy into it, and then when you need the money, they give you the money back, tenfold. There's so many new things, new products on the market. Someone just said annuities. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, just talk to a professional. Have I said that before?
Yeah. Okay. Liz asked, do you have some specific suggestions for how to get a patient advocate in place for a solo ager who's unable to advocate for themselves? So Liz, sounds like you're helping somebody, and the patient advocate community is growing. The and there's some on this call, so drop your contact information in the chat, because there might be one in your area. But typing into Google patient advocate near me, calling
That's
two
right.
or three is key. Any words of wisdom on the patient advocate front?
Yeah, no, you said what I was going to say, but you
Okay.
did. What popped in my mind is to also be aware of the new resources for widows and widowers, because this again will transition into a caregiving situation. And so now I'm very fortunate to be part of several widow groups, and these women are in their 40s and 50s. They're very young. And so they are pushing against everything and saying, this is not right, what is happening. They're becoming advocates for widows. And so part of our caregiving, even though they may not need caregiving, we could begin to help them now with a whole bunch of new resources that are available.
And a lot of folks have had questions about your other book, Who Will Take Care of Me When I'm Old? Can you give a brief overview of what we can expect in that book? And I provided the link to both books.
Great. Just as I said before, everything you learned today is in the reverse in that book. And like I said, it asks different questions because we become our own advocates at this point. Now, many people will find that they will do both. As caregivers, what we got to do is, when we're caregiving, we're also taking care of ourselves. So we need both. We've come full circle on the kinds of care we take care of ourselves while we're caring for someone else.
And several comments about villages, often referred to as age-in-place villages. These are grassroots communities. You may have somebody in your neighborhood. You may have one in your neighborhood. Joy, do you want to comment on the value that villages place if somebody has one in their community?
Oh, they're invaluable. So check them out. And you don't have to live in a single family home. You can live in a NORC like I do. There's plenty of people in this building who are also a member of Village Chicago. Just check it out. I mean, wonderful things. You can never have too many people in your life that you like and trust.
Yeah, and when I was talking earlier about building your own personal village, what I like about joining the village or finding a patient advocate, they are now, you plug them in, and now you might be paying a membership, or you might be paying a fee, but it's making your personal village more robust, so that if something happens in the future, you have more people to lean on. Let's see. Okay. Lots of long-term care insurance talk in there. I'll let that go there. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to run through this. What about the trend? I like this, Johan. What about the trend to move to a less expensive foreign country? We actually did a discussion on this, which I'll drop into chat. But you know, for many of us in living in the United States, we're in what we call the forgotten middle, or caught between the cracks group, where it's very difficult to afford this care, and we don't qualify for subsidies. And there are many countries out there that are encouraging pensioners to come and provide a more affordable lifestyle. It's not without its complications, but there's many people that have chosen that lifestyle.
Well, I have a personal experience. My brother lives in Thailand, and this is a country where they do life in a village. My nieces, he's married to a Thai woman, and both of my nieces were raised by a village. And when my sister-in-law's mother died, the village took over and took care of things. So it is something to really look into if you want to say goodbye to America. A lot of people I know are doing that.
And the interesting thing, I dropped it into chat, but Dan Preschner, the editor at International Living, we had a question on there. What about assisted living in some of these Latin American countries? It's like, it doesn't really exist. It's
No, it
that
doesn't.
the
It doesn't.
housekeeper and the cook that you can hire uh, and is affordable end up taking care of many of their clients as they grow older.
Right. I have Italian dual citizenship with Italy, and it's the same there. We get together, and there's really no assisted living, no nursing
Um,
homes, and things don't really matter when someone has dementia. We all just go with the flow, and it's just the way life is in other countries.
okay, and folks, I'll make sure to put links to all these, but Nancy Ruffner is she gave us links of all the patient advocate organizations in chat. And I'll also drop in the Aging Life Care Association, where you can go on and search their database, see if you can find a few in your region, give them a call. But one person was asking a question I saw in there that said something along the lines of the patient advocate and fiduciaries. There's a difference. I mean,
Yeah,
patient advocate,
fiduciary. Yeah, fiduciary is a financial person. Patient advocate does other things. So
okay.
again, it's yeah, and when we do seek financial advice, that's the first question you want to ask: is are you a fiduciary? Because that's a person who is just has your own needs in mind and not anybody else's. They're not selling you investments. They just want to make sure you're okay financially.
Okay, Roger says, how can we save or print the list that's in chat? Roger, I'll have all this on our website, but I believe I have it set up so that you can download it if you just click the three dots at the bottom of your screen by the chat. But don't worry, it'll be at proaging.com later this afternoon. Okay, and all right, let me just, okay. Ruth says, I have difficulty finding a NORC, naturally occurring retirement community, when investigating numerous cities to identify for relocation. And there's a reason for that. Ruth is that nobody has formally identified any apartment or condo as a NORC. It's more the shifting demographics of the residents that live there. My advice, because I've had this question, where do I find the NORCs? My advice is look for walkable communities and look for locations that are close to grocery stores. And my experience has said 9 out of 10 times, those buildings are oftentimes have a higher percentage of older adults living in them.
Wow, I never thought of that. That's great. And if you have the time, just stand in front of the building and see who's coming and going.
Yeah, it's always good to check out neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody asked when you brought up our discussion on urban living, when we're going to have that. And Joy, we're going to do that in next year. And I'm really excited about that because we got Joy, who lives in Chicago, and she can speak from that perspective. We're hoping to get a few different panel members, who, so if you know anybody, or if you're out there and you live in a city and you'd like to talk about what it's like, or you live in a walkable, one of these suburban walkable neighborhoods, let us know. We want to have that discussion because it's a great solution for a lot of us. Okay. And I tell you what, because we're already at an hour and 10 minutes. And I apologize for anybody who I missed your question. I think it's critical to consider, Michelle says, I think it's critical for consider what happens when you put off making a plan. I share frequently about the event that will take away all the choices and options you have: a fall, a broken hip, dementia. Someone will step in if you are unable to make decisions, and generally you're not going to have an opportunity to sort of agree with those decisions.
And I want to say something about that from the caregiver point of view. That's a terrible place to put a person without making a plan. It's just wrong to expect them to pick up and clean the mess. I just see it way too many times. And that's why if we have people in our lives, if we don't say something now before anything happens, we might end up in that situation. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I'm going to say. I see a bunch of comments asking about, somebody brought up support groups and a solo aging support group. And we've done a few things on here before to this extent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with y'all who attended this event. And I'm gonna ask you if you'd like. I mean, it's super easy for me to pick a date each month that we just have an open dialogue on solo aging. And what I recommend that we do based on some of the comments here is that instead of featuring a speaker who's going to talk about an agenda item, it's the people in the audience set the agenda. Okay. So it'll just be, hey, we're here, it's solo aging talk, and we just line up and we just, you've got a soapbox. I think that format might be helpful. And so I'll send out an email if y'all are interested in that. We'll try to set a date in the future. And if it's something that works out, we'll just keep on doing it each month. Okay.
Wow, that's really generous of you, Steve, because what you're doing is you're beginning the process of people taking care of people. And this is what it's all about. There's no magic formula here. What it comes down to is we are together in this, and we talk to each other and we come to each other's rescue. So thank you for saying that and doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
So
what
great.
I found with my dialogue with many people who are older adults is and identifying or concerned that they're going to be a solo ager is it's very lonely. It's very scary. And but then if you've got an opportunity, even on like a discussion like this, is that, wow, I'm not alone. Other people have the same concerns as me. And if we can help make some connections, even if they're across the world or across the country, that maybe that could give people confidence and empower them.
I will tell you that I have been on several of those calls, and inevitably somebody's like a neighbor of somebody on the call and they didn't know it, and they connect. It's amazing, but it happens all the time.
Okay, I agree with this one. Joy, they want you back to talk about your other. So
let's do it.
What we'll do is I'll give you my calendar. We'll get that on the books, and we'll do that. But this has been wonderful. I thank everybody who's contributed to this. I'll get this up online as quickly as possible. I promise before the weekend, you'll get an email from me, and I'll have some different dates that we can choose from, and let's kind of move this to just an informal open discussion on solo aging and see where it goes.
If you could talk to your friends about caregiving, about just wake them up. You're going to be surprised how many people who are aging solo are not thinking about this. And if you do know people that are solo aging, and you might be one, and you're out to dinner, and just tell them that about the enormous amount of help that's available, and that they need to put this on their plate and not just ask the question, who's going to take care of me? How about who's going to land on my doorstep? And if you're wondering who might land on your doorstep, just take a look at the contact list on your phone. That's who's going to be on your doorstep. I just want to thank you. I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is not an easy conversation and everybody here is proactive, so yay.
I think the thing that we also need to say to everybody when we have these discussions, not just this topic, but many, is at the beginning, I'm going to start to say, hey, folks, we don't have a magic wand today, okay? We don't have that magic wand that's going to solve all of our problems. But what we do have is we can bring up topics that create a new way of thinking and ideas and solutions that you never thought of before. So in a weird way, that is a magic wand, but a lot of times it's you know, it's very challenging when we're talking about these topics because we've all come from different situations. Okay, this is great. Thank you, Joy. We'll look forward to things, and I will get this up and follow up with everybody on this discussion as quickly as I can.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for being here.